What's going on, everybody? My name is John Paz, and welcome to episode 23 of Destination Talk.
And I am Harry, and we are coming to you again from Chop Studios, located at 750 Route 34 in Matawan, New Jersey. And a big shout out and a thank you to our show sponsor, The Academy. You can contact them at 908-540-6936 to set up your free class. Today, we are joined by a powerhouse in the world of sports performance coaching, Eric Mitchell. Eric has been a staple at the Parisi Speed School since 2005, helping athletes elevate their game. He is also the creator of Tsunami Effect Coaching, where he is taking a unique approach to coaching that goes beyond just physical training and focuses on building mental toughness and leadership. Eric, it is an absolute pleasure to finally connect with you again. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. The sun has come out, so I'm very happy after some major thunderstorms down here in the Philadelphia area. I'm sure you guys got pounded too.
Yeah.
But just really happy to be here and be able to hang with you guys for a little bit and talk some shop and talk about sports and performance and the mental game of everything.
No, we appreciate it. And so just a little bit of backstory. Eric and I first met in 2012 in New Orleans at a conference. And, that was my first introduction to really some of the heavy hitters of what this industry was all about. Bill Parisi himself, John Cirillo, I mean, the man, the myth, the legend himself, right there. Steve Leo. I mean, these are some of the Martin was still there. Martin Rooney was still there at that time before he went on to do his own thing. But it's great to connect with you again. I know we had spoken prior to coming on, and I think we had said the last time we'd actually seen each other was 2019.
Wow, right before the pandemic.
Right before the pandemic, and then it's funny. It's like our last episode, our guest was talking about how things happen for a reason and so forth. And Eric reached out to me. He saw one of our episodes, and then we got on a conversation, and now we got him on episode 23 of the podcast. So Eric, again, welcome to the show. How about start with your background? Where you went to school, sports that you were affiliated with, and and then what ultimately led you into this sports performance career path.
Yeah, I mean, I had an unorthodox approach. I went a multi-sport athlete at junior out of college, track and football, back in the 80s. So 85 to 89, I was on track to become a Marine Corps officer, going to go to law school for the United States Marine Corps. Got to about prepping for everything for that, got promptly sick and couldn't go down to officer candidate school. They asked me to enlist. I said at 23, there's no way I'm enlisting without any guarantees I would Mustang up to officer candidate school. And that didn't work out. So I decided to start coaching, and it started in the Nautilus world, guys. I cut my teeth in the super slow to failure world back in the 90s, got to meet Arthur Jones, the creator of Nautilus, which was an experience, and started coaching high school track. I mean, the 100 and the 200 was my specialty in college. And I coached sprinters all the way till about 1996, and then decided to break away from personal training and open my own facility and for sports performance. And it was a mentor of mine, a gentleman named Kevin Tolbert, who was eventually he was with Harbaugh in Stanford, and then with the 49ers, and then eventually with Michigan. And he's the one who said to me, you know what, you belong training athletes. Nobody trained athletes. So it's a parallel to Bill Parisi's story. About the 90s, I started doing some sports performance, guys. And
Right.
The old adage was you can't teach speed. And I asked the editor of the Philadelphia Inquirer sports department to write a story on my company, and he laughed in my face, basically saying you can't teach speed. And something unique happened that year, 1997. It was the first time the NFL Combine was broadcast on ESPN. And there was one reporter. So you guys think about the Combine now. Now they sell tickets for spectators to go. And about a couple weeks after that, this gentleman who was the editor, Art Carey, called me on my cell phone. I always tell this story. I'm in my white Chevy Bronco, which, if you think about Bill's up in North Jersey driving a white van, driving a white van around. At least I had a Bronco, right? So or a Blazer. I'm sorry, guys. And I had the cell phone. You had to pop the bottom and then pull the antenna up to
Yes.
get
I
a
had
call.
one of those phones.
Yeah,
I've never
You
had
would
any of
not
those.
know.
No,
I
no.
had
you
one of
would
those
not.
phones.
Right. Me being 57, that's what I had to deal with. And he called me and said, "Hey, I want to write an article about your company. Can you meet me at Haverford College in 45 minutes?" And that's a small liberal arts school outside of Philly. Guys, I hung up the phone and I thought to myself, well, I don't have a company. So I made it up on the way to the interview, and I called it Parisi Speed Training. And from then on, I was telling this, I had 48 phone calls within 3 days of parents saying, "Can you get my kid faster?" And then jumped to '05. Bill Parisi contacted me. I didn't know anything about Parisi. Got a couple business partners. We opened a rather large Parisi Speed School in 2005 in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, and haven't looked back since. Have been a master coach since 2014. I was just down in Charlotte actually certifying Charlotte's their champion sports performance program, along with a couple other new affiliates. And guys, and just so you know, Harry, man, I was involved in Martin's Training for Warriors
Yeah,
program for adults for many
you
years.
were for many years
And
too. Yes.
and now, listen, I think at the point now, two knee replacements later, I can still train pretty hard and do the things I need to do for me, but I think it's time to pass the torch to a younger generation of coaches. And I formed, and there's a whole story behind it we can get into, the Tsunami Effect Coaching about February 16th of 2025. I have a book coming out. It just got finished. Bill Parisi's going to write the foreword to the book.
Oh, that's great.
And that book's going to really outline and tie into my course on the Tsunami Effect, which really goes for high performers. So CEOs of companies, I just landed my first really big one. It's a huge real estate developer in the United States, and working on his kind of journey back to health. But guys, it really outlines kind of where we are in our pain points as coaches and as individuals. And that's the Tsunami Effect itself, which we can certainly talk about as we go along.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that. But first, Coach, what has been some of the biggest shifts in sports performance from when you started to now?
Yeah, well, I think that when we first started, there was no real codified system. If you guys think about it, I mean, even up until the early 1980s, there were only 3 NFL teams that were really working on codified strength and speed programs. And that was, I got to say, my Pittsburgh Steelers were one of them.
Oh, I'm a Steeler fan.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. My first game was 1976 against the expansion Buccaneers in Three River Stadium. That's the first game I went to.
I've never been to a game. Steelers
You have
game.
to.
I gotta go. Yep.
You're going this year. That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
We don't live very far from each other. You're going.
Let's do it.
And the Raiders and the Cowboys were the only other teams. And the old adage was true. It's that you couldn't teach speed. That's what was told to us. What's the major shift, and I'll tell you what I think has happened, is number one, the cultural piece of it is really important. Clearly, what we're trying to do is create self-confidence and belief in kids. So it's not necessarily in sports performance about talent. It's not necessarily that the most talented kids are the ones that you're always going to work with. You're going to actually work with the kids that are not specifically talented. And how do you raise them up and bring them up to the level they should be at? Secondly, the science. Guys, in the last year and a half, the science has changed so dramatically. We're getting into more fascia. We're getting into dynamic systems training. And I think that that's the major shift that's happening is there's been some revolutionary changes in the way we warm up, the way we recover, the way we use force production. But I think the major shift in my mind has got to be that is the problem in sports performance right now is also this shift that these kids are no longer doing general preparedness. What they're doing is just playing sports all the time.
Yeah, I agree with
have
that.
It's just awful what we're doing to these kids. So I think that that's the change, but also I think the coaching has changed a lot too. Harry can really kind of address this too. I mean, we have coaches that are so incredibly intelligent and savvy now, way beyond what used to be in sports performance. And I think that that's the shift that's been happening. So the science and the culture are starting to grow rapidly. And I think the culture is the most important piece. Some people could argue with me, no, but I have examples of why. Just if you're science based, it's not going to work every single time if you don't have the culture piece of the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know from my own experience, I started in 2011, and
right.
And I really it was out of necessity in a sense. I was just told to go to this. Cirillo was showing up. He was doing a certification. I mean, this intimidating figure is standing in front of us, and we got like a 6-day certification done in 2.5 days. and I couldn't move. My body, what Cyril was was a former Marine drill sergeant, if I remember correctly. I mean, and he ran the certification like that. And I remember when I got certified. I remember walking through the front door of my house at the time, and I says, I don't know what just happened to me, and I don't know if I can do this. But you fast forward, and individuals such as yourself, Eric, I've never said this to you out loud, but you've been a mentor. You've been someone who I've always been able to go to. Like I said, we didn't talk for about 5-6 years, and all of a sudden it's like we've never missed a beat. But you've always been there for me, whether it be text, call, even in person. You came to my facility in person, spoke to my staff, and you did that one day, and I've never forgot that. And like I said in the introduction, you are certainly a powerhouse in this field. I don't know if you get the full respect you should be getting for what you've done and know, but I want you to know how much I appreciate the work you've done for me.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm honored to be here, and I appreciate those words. I mean, for me, it's about that. That's the piece of it too, the service that you provide for other coaches. And Harry, listen, I've learned a lot from you as well. So
Oh,
anytime
thank
that
you.
I'm around coaches, I learn just as much from them as I can teach for them as well, because it just makes me a better coach. It makes me a better mentor than listen, guys, I'm not shy. I had to hire a coach in January to help me kind of redirect where I was going, because I wouldn't have done it myself.
Right.
And I think that that's the thing in our industry, Harry. Like, you're the kind of person that the kids really matter. And when you see the way that you coach, the kids matter. And to me, that's the key. I guess that's another shift in the industry. There's a very egocentric kind of industry that we're in, whether it be personal training or coaching. I think the shift has happened because the kids have changed a lot, especially since the pandemic. You do have to treat them a little differently than you used to before.
Right.
Gone are the days. Listen, I mean, our coaches yelled at us in college and made us, I vomited on a coach. I puked right on him because it was so intimidating. And I was a young kid, I was 17 years old. And but I think that's another piece of it, that we've adjusted and changed, and that the industry has changed dramatically. Plus, the competition is ridiculous. I mean, the three of us could right now just decide to make a certification, and we could sell a certification. And it blows your mind away that it's not regulated.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not. And I think that's the one thing too for me is, I'm NASM certified, I'm Parisi certified, I'm USR certified as far as when it comes to the speed and the agility. And
Sure.
and like we've spoken before, I don't have certifications in either of these, but OTA and Westside Barbell, I found that their methods of teaching certainly come into what I do every single day. I don't know how you feel about this. This is my opinion. I think people kind of get hung up on all those extra letters after their last name, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't have some type of foundational work there, but I don't know if it's really necessary. It's these types of conversations. It's just putting the work. I don't know if 18 certifications makes you a better coach.
No, it doesn't at all. I mean, what makes you a great coach is the way you communicate, whether you're dealing with children or adults. How you communicate. I'll take a Starbucks barista who can engage with people and try them out as a coach. I mean, if they're
Right.
if they're personable, I'll do that. I mean, I have done it.
Right.
And that's what it ends up being. Listen, guys, I have a great story about that. I had a talented coach who was unbelievably talented and looked the part, was ripped, was fit, but she's a scientist at heart. So she's very clinical, and she couldn't understand why she couldn't reach the kids. And we had to have that heart-to-heart discussion. She, as talented, and by the way, very talented, double master's degree, super intelligent, but clinical. So she couldn't relate her knowledge base and her intelligence to the kids. It doesn't work. And that's a hard conversation as an owner or a boss to have with a performance coach, to say, it's just not the right fit. And, she's great at what she does now. She's working more in a physiology lab. Perfect. Great. But if you're not personable, it's not going to work. And I think you're exactly right. You don't have to have 60 billion certifications. I think people sometimes get a little enamored with that.
Right.
But listen, I've known NFL coaches who don't have that. Just that they're so talented in terms of the strength world at what they do, that they're hired based on that.
Well, it's all about relationships. We're in front of the athletes, but for me, something that has worked very well for me is I tell parents, this isn't just me and your son or me and your daughter. This involves all of us. And we all have to be a part of this process if we want there to be success. And I do think that sometimes too many people today are chasing that viral video, or, in our world, listen, we're business owners. We have that wonderful conversation. We lay out the red carpet, but then the next time we speak to these people again is when we want them to purchase again. And I don't believe that that's the right way to go about it.
Yeah, I don't think you even need to. I think if and I, I'm sure that you have the same experience. I mean, I've had kids that were 7 years old and they were training up until they were seniors in college with
Right.
us. So when you have that happen, or they're bringing their own kids,
Right.
when you're the beacon of, I had one athlete went all the way through college football, and I had to do the last interview for him to become a Delaware State police officer. It was actually very grueling for me to be interviewed by a retired high-level state police officer who, every third question was asking me if this young man would violate the Constitution of the United States, and it was purposely done. But here's the bottom line: the kid had impeccable character.
Right.
But the fact that he asked me to do it if you ask that's one of the biggest honors I could have, if they come to me after the training, after that, and their life story is built around the fact that we were coaches. You've heard me say this before, Harry. Like, we're not trainers, we're coaches. Trainers kind of impact what's happening during the period of time that you're training somebody. You're coaching, that's a lifelong commitment that
Correct.
you've made to that athlete, and they get it. And when they come back to you, listen, one of my most satisfying things right now is I'm working with a special needs athlete who's a football player, and he plays public school, but his parents said that they're almost nonverbal, but he's coming out of his shell. So right now, with all these athletes I've trained, like, that's the kind of athlete that I want to focus on, to say, like, I'm going to make more of an impact on him than, say, the professional athlete that
Right.
we work with.
Mhm.
So I think that's why I keep saying culture. You're developing great human beings with great character and leadership skills. Man, doesn't that make us feel better? Makes me a better father. I have a 15-year-old son, and it's going to make me a better dad as a result of it. And I think that we didn't think we'd be getting into this business from a cultural standpoint. We didn't think that.
No,
And that's where we are.
I certainly, for me, it was out of necessity. I needed a job, but I wanted to kind of, it was, well, and true, but it was the closest thing for me to get back to being around athletes, because I knew my playing days were over. And it's evolved. I broke into this industry in 2010. So here we are 15 years later, and, I'm co-hosting a podcast with one of my former athletes. And
I was going to say, look at us, Harry.
Right. I'm 15 years into this, and I would have never thought this would have happened.
It's amazing, right?
It's great.
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
So, Coach, can you tell us a little bit about what your vision of the Tsunami Effect Coaching is, and where do you see it going in the coming years?
Sure. Well, guys, I mean, listen, I had a pretty big emotional break. I had a relationship of 8 years with my girlfriend Karen kind of fall apart in mid-January. We are, I'm very happy to say, rebuilding it right now. That's part of the Tsunami Effect. I'm grateful to her that she actually initiated the tsunami that caused me to get off my butt and start to move forward in a project I wanted. So think of a tsunami like this. Tsunami is essentially, it's an underwater disturbance a lot of times. So if there's an underwater earthquake, and what happens is an immense amount of energy is released, just incredible amount of energy, and it forms these waves that move off in every direction from the epicenter of the earthquake. And what it does, it's imperceptible when it's out to sea. These small ripples, you wouldn't even notice it if you were out to sea. But what happens is it starts to get closer to the shoreline where it's more shallow. The water starts to pile up and it slams into the coastlines. But it's not just one wave, it's many waves, and it causes an immense destruction. So I equate it to this. If we don't look and recognize the ripples of fear, frustration, anxiety, and depression, we don't start to see that as individuals, we don't look and recognize the ripples, it's going to slam into your shoreline, which is your conscious and subconscious mind. So even if you do recognize all these things, you're going to probably have at some points in your lives, emotional tsunamis that are going to affect your health. It's going to affect your relationships and your career. And that's the exact order I put it in. Your career is last, and it is a distant last compared to your health and your relationships. So what it's designed to do is, it's a course, guys. It's a course that's part of the book. It's designed for people, I'd say high performers, but here's where high performers are. It's anybody. You could be a school teacher, stay-at-home parent, could be anybody. Are you recognizing all those different levels of those emotional crises that are caused? And if you do, how do you build the citadels to protect yourself against those? And how do you have the early warning system? That's what I said. So it's an early warning system to recognize what's going on in your life. And I think oftentimes high performers, they ignore it. They forget about those things. They don't pay attention. And unfortunately, what's affected a great deal is your health, and the relationships fall apart, and then ultimately your career starts to slip. But what happened to me was, I knew right away, within 48 hours of this crisis we had, that I had to do something to show her that I was going to change my life. I was numb, literally just kind of going through the motions. Guys, I had gained a lot of weight on a 5'8" frame. I was 199 pounds. I was a mess for me. I'm very active. Happy to say I'm down to 183 and doing a lot of things differently. I feel more fit than I have in 30 years. But also I had a kind of a religious and a spiritual awakening for myself on February 15th. And after I had that, guys, the very next day, I literally started writing the framework for the Tsunami Effect. And like I said, hired a coach and then hired a company to help me write a book. And that's what I did. And it really is designed as a form of self-help, but it's very introspective. There's a whole workbook that goes along with the book. I said for myself, guys, training athletes is great. There's no doubt about it. But I also know it's a young man's or young woman's game now. What I wanted to do is reach more people. How in the world am I going to serve more people if I'm sitting on a turf surface just training 6 to 8 athletes per hour? It's just that's not my vision. So my vision, guys, honestly, I want to be up on stage. I've done it before. I've been on stage before, but now I want a bigger audience. And honestly, man, it's just to serve more people. It's to serve more people, to get people aware of what their pain points are, to get them aware of those ripples, to see that. So that's kind of it in a nutshell of how that happened. That was a lot of stuff in the last couple of months, that's for sure.
So you are still coaching, you are still around athletes. So have you been able to apply any of the Tsunami Effect to them and in your coaching style at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, that's the great point. I'm coaching. I don't think I'll ever truly get away from coaching. Guys, I could be offered millions of dollars, which is the goal. That's the eventual goal. There is no doubt in my mind that I will pick and choose, and I will absolutely still do something within the framework of coaching youth athletes, but it'll be on my terms. Right. And it fits right in. I think what it's done is it's enhanced my ability as a coach. I'll tell you, Harry, you can relate to this so well. So I'm calm. I'm at peace with what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm no longer chasing the dollar. What's happened is I had this awakening emotionally and spiritually. And what it's done now is it's calmed my mind as to what I really want to do. And it has made a difference in that. But yeah, there's no doubt I will somehow be involved at some level of coaching. And I'll tell you an exact example. I was in Charlotte, North Carolina over the weekend, certifying that Parisi staff. That piece of it I loved, being able to interact with coaches, right, to help them grow their businesses and to help them grow their cultural piece for the community. I'll never get away from that. So yeah, that's where I am.
I think, and we've been talking about this a little bit ourselves, but I kind of see myself, I'm in the beginning stages of where you're at right now, in that I love coaching and I love being around the athletes and the families I'm with. But like you said, you can only touch so many lives. There's only so much you can do in in our industry, it's the school hours, 10 months out of a year. So let's just say between 2 and 9, Monday through Friday. But I just feel like there's a bigger calling out there to share what I've been able to give to all of you. John's one of my former athletes. I mean, I guess he's former now. He's not, former. Former. It's just a shame that it is that way. But, it's training individuals like John. I've been blessed, as you have, to have been around some amazing athletes. And like you had said too, when they reach out to you, actually, as a matter of fact, Avery reached out wanting to know if I was at the facility today. She plays lacrosse at the University of Cal. And she's like, hey, are you at the facility? I'm like, no, I'm going to record some episodes of the podcast. And she's like, boo-hoo, I wish, it's like when you get those interactions, you realize that you've left an impact far beyond their field of play. And I don't know if I can ever completely walk away from that. But you have 7 years on me. I'm not quite there yet. But, I can tell the body might not be holding up much longer over time, because it's a physically demanding sport, job. I mean, we're not point and say type of people. We're physically doing the work with these athletes. And when you're doing it for 6-8 hours a day, it's a lot.
Yeah, but I think also if you touch deeper on that, you're sitting next to John, you coached him.
Right.
And I mean, so what's happened now is, he would not be sitting there if you didn't make an incredible impact on him. So if I always go back to this, I had an athlete. So guys, just think about this. I started coaching high school track in 1990. So 1990, I started coaching. So I was 22 years old. Some of the seniors I was working with were 18 years old. So they're only
Right.
4 years younger than me. So I had they were a couple in high school, Nate and Kristen, and they're long married now, and they have kids, and they're both coaches in Vermont. Years and years ago, probably, oh gosh, not years, and I shouldn't be saying this. I was 50 at the time, so 7 years ago. Nate called me because he saw something that Parisi was doing on maximal speed, and he said, "Hey, coach, listen, I want your advice on something." And I said to him, "Nate, you got to call me Eric, man. You're like 46 years old, like." And he stopped. He said, there was a pause, and he goes, "Yeah, I just can't do that.
Yeah,
It's coach." So it doesn't matter how long it is. It won't matter how long it is. The level of respect that you kind of engendered, even if you didn't know it
Right.
at the time, that is an incredible feeling. So, for instance, one of my coaches in college, Coach Hartman, was our sprint coach. Well, I don't even know his first name. He's coach. Like, that's it. He's long gone. I mean, he passed away, but it doesn't matter. There's a level of respect that you have for your coaches. And you've heard this said before. There is no job, I don't care what it is, nobody is respected more than a coach. I don't care who it is. No one's running around calling people, "Hey," saying, "my accountant."
right.
No one's saying that. They're saying "my coach." There's an emotional tie to that. Like we talk to each other. We may even say, "What's up, coach?"
Yeah.
Like, you just say it.
We absolutely do that. Yes.
And it's respect, man. It is absolute respect. And John, you're going to learn that when if you're coaching. You're going to get that feel. How old are you? How old are you, John?
I just turned 23 last week.
Dude,
So
23.
Yeah, I know.
So I started coaching
Yeah.
at your age.
mhm.
And that's like, so you're going to, and if that's the path you're going to go down or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody's a coach.
Yeah,
My wife-
I helped start coaching at my club, Yale Street Wrestling Club, just recently, like more and more. So I'm kind of listening to you guys talk and kind of visualizing and seeing things, through your conversation.
Well, John, I got to experience last year. I got to go up. A good friend of mine is very heavily connected with Penn State wrestling.
Be careful, Eric. Don't mention that school to him.
Well,
He's a Rutgers
just
guy.
saying.
He's a Rutgers guy. Don't mention that
I
school
know.
to him.
It's all good. It's all good. But I went to a match and I saw 17,000 people going to a wrestling match.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was a circus. It was one of the greatest things I ever experienced in terms of that. But I get it. Now I get it. The little Rutgers Penn State rivalry.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
But like at
I'm
Rutgers
good with
matches,
that.
I wrestled in front of 10,000 people
10,000,
every
yeah.
Friday night. It's putting things in different perspective. And then
Sure.
Harry and I would train on a football field at 7 a.m. together, and that's the stuff I used to do in the summer. So it gives you different perspectives all the time. So.
Well, Harry, was he one of the athletes? And I'm asking you as a coach. And
Sure.
I'll ask John, was he one of the athletes that you looked at and said that good athletes kind of just do what they're supposed to do, and great ones just do more than anybody else is willing to do?
100%. I was blessed. I won't get into it now. I'll have to share the story with you off camera at some point as to how we met. It's a very interesting story, but we kind of shared it in our very first episode. But when I was introduced to John, immediately I realized that he was a workhorse. And I used to say this all the time. He would outwork 100 people by himself. And, they're that rare breed of athlete. I mean, in our industry, we tend to get those people we have to really motivate. Now, that wasn't the case with John. He was reaching out to me. Hey, when are we training? What are we doing? What can I be working on? And made my job easier, but it really wasn't, because I knew nothing about wrestling when I first met him 5 years ago. So for me, it was, okay, this is what I'm thinking. Can you please tell me how this applies to what you do? And then we would come up with things together. But then it would subsequently carry over to other athletes, because then I could figure out how there were other applications to it. And John mentioned working out on the football field. Well, this past summer, and I mentioned her a little earlier, John and Avery's a lacrosse player at Cal. He's a wrestler at Rutgers, and they're working out together. But there's two college athletes. There's competition. They're pushing each other to become better, and neither one of them cares that they play completely different sports.
Doesn't matter.
No,
it's that you've got two superior athletes, but it's the frame of mind that's brought, and then you've got a coach such as yourself who's honing that skill set in for both of them, and they might not know it at the time, but 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it might be, your input and your skill set as a coach made all the difference in the world to them. It's why he's sitting right next to you right now. That's why Avery's texting you and asking if you're going to be in the facility.
right.
And that's respect, Harry. And that to me, that's everything.
It's certain. And sometimes that's hard to accept, when you really think about it. But as I've been reflecting on it more, and as I'm getting older and I'm watching these athletes, they're still kids to me. I mean, you can understand that part of it. And they're all graduating, or they're getting close, or they're doing internships, and I'm like, my God, where the heck's this time going? But I've often shared that a lot of my athletes and families have been with me not for months but for years, and certainly you have to acknowledge that there's something very good going on when that's the case.
Well, it's something I brought up, and guys, listen, I've been on several podcasts. I want to tell you that eventually you're going to be on mine when I launch the Tsunami Effect podcast. But
sounds good.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, you got to do it. I heard this before, so I certainly didn't make this up, and I've said it before on other podcasts. There's thermometer people and there's thermostat people.
Yeah, I remember this one.
The thermostat people are the ones that are going to go into a room. They change the temperature of the room. They just do. And it was something Karen had told me a while back. And I didn't believe her. She said, you can light up a room or destroy a room basically based on your mood. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize I had that power. You just don't think it. It goes back to what you said, Harry, about it's very difficult. If you're a humble person, it's very difficult to accept the fact that you're part of the journey.
Right.
So as John's athletic journey, it's very tough as a coach to sit back and go, yeah, I did participate in that. We usually say, no, I facilitated things. He did all the work.
Right.
The reality is you brought out a lot of that skill set in him as well. And he's going to do the same thing when he's coaching. And that's what it means to be a thermometer person or a thermostat person. I know plenty of people that are just thermometers and are just measuring the temperature. But if you can change things, and that's what a coach does, you are literally changing the temperature of a room based on your skill set, your knowledge base, and your commitment to make people better. Man, I just cannot imagine not being a part of that coaching world, no matter, and even the stuff I'm doing now,
right.
The shift I'm making, still the same thing. It's still coaching.
No, and I also think, I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry, but I go back to when I first broke into this industry, and you know who I'm referring to, but he was a larger than life figure. And he was just doing his own thing, but how much I would have liked to have been able to have learned from him, but
sure.
He didn't want to share that information. And listen, we all know this industry is very cutthroat. Everyone thinks they've got the secret, but the reality is no one has any secrets. Nope. Because we've all been doing it. We all steal from each other, and that's just the reality of it. But, as I've evolved in being a coach and as a business owner now coming up on almost 3 years, it goes beyond just the athletes I'm working with. It's even my staff, and that's something that I've been shifting towards now too, and realizing that, I can leave an impact even further than the athletes is by working with the people who are working with me, because they can have an impact on the other kids in the room that I'm not physically involved with.
Sure. Just imagine, down the road that, that's ultimately that's what you want. So I've had staff members that have gone off. They may not have, some of them have their own Parisi, some started their own thing. I'm so proud of them.
Right.
That they went out and did that. And if I had any level of influence on them to help them make those decisions. And by the way, they still contact me. I'm still in touch with all of them. I have some that have their own programs and everything. And we'll talk, and almost like, I don't like the word mastermind. I can't stand it, but because everybody has their mastermind, but it is kind of like that, where you're kind of bouncing ideas off one another as to how to make everything better. And I mean, Harry, ultimately, and John, you'll learn this as you keep going on your journey. Like that's what you're doing. If you're impacting others to be leaders, Well, we've done our job.
Right.
And then also, I'm a big, big, big believer in service and charity work. That you have got to make sure part of your mission is to help underserved people. I have a passion to help kids that were abused or kids that have specific genetic conditions, to raise money for them. I was just, when we were in Charlotte, I was just looking at a picture of, I was part of a world record that Training for Warriors did, the most amount of weights most amount of weight deadlift in an hour, literally a Guinness Book of World Records. Guy, we were almost at 4 million pounds over an hour. And I was part of that. We raised money for cancer for the J Fund. That's what we did. Like, that's what you should be doing. It cannot just be about the skills and the drills and the weights and
Right.
all those fun things. The tangible results, that's one thing. Everybody's going to make improvement if they put their effort into it. But are you impacting? And I've shifted. When I was your age, all I wanted to do was train professional athletes, and I was pretty blessed. I actually jumped right into that. I was in the tennis world training top 10 tennis players, and NFL football players. But now, if you ask me, I want to create a business where it's sustaining enough. Yeah, I want to make money so that I have a legacy for my son. That's a big piece of this, and then also to help as many people as I can. And I really believe this. Like, God wants you to make a lot of money. Like, he does. He wants you to make a lot of money so that you can then have a platform to serve others.
Right.
And make sure that you're, being charitable on a lot of different levels, not just monetary, but what are you contributing? And I'm so passionate about that.
You were just saying that the big reason why we started this podcast was the name Destination Talk, because we want to see everyone's journeys, because everyone has a different destination. And that's kind of how Harry and I came up with it. And now we're on episode 23.
Yeah, we can't even keep counting.
23 episodes, and everyone has a different journey. Everyone has a different destination, and we're in, for all of our listeners, we're hopefully inspiring people or giving them little bits and pieces. Your thermometer example, I love that. I'd never heard that before, but that's kind of our vision behind this, and it's taking off, hopefully.
Well, and
I've watched your podcast. You guys are thermostats.
No, well, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
You can see it.
Well, we appreciate that, and I don't even still think we know what we're trying to do here. We show up like once a month. We record 3 or 4 episodes, and then we kind of have like a post game meeting after the fact. Like, we'll leave here today, and I don't think we get 5 minutes away from the studio, and we're on the phone. Like, we're kind of breaking it down like it's game tape. But
I love it.
It's that excitement of what we're doing, and I would say, the podcast was an idea that was kind of simmering in my head for a while, but then it was like, and I shared this, like, I had a story I wanted to tell, but then it was like, well, once that story's done, what do you do next? And when I shared that with John, he kind of said the same thing. And then that's how this whole thing came about, because we realized we can share our story, but then now we can bring other people on to share theirs. And then we can hopefully use this as a platform for people to be inspired, to learn, to want to do more than what they're doing,
and share their stories as well.
Yeah, and share their story. That's the most important part.
I think that's the noble venture of what you are all both trying to do, and that you're learning about how people are going to learn from you guys how to get better, and also they're going to tell their stories, and it's going to grow and expand. I'm telling you, you can feel it just in the way that you both present this. This is going to be exciting.
No, thank you, Eric. So, Eric, a question that we typically ask all of our guests is, and I think you're a good person to ask this question of, with what you know now today, if you had to go back to that 22-year-old version of yourself, what would you tell him with what you've got going on?
Patience, discipline, show better leadership. I think there's no doubt about that. Manage money better. That's another thing that I would have thought about at 23. I think overall it would have been more being more gentle with myself about the way I did things. Right. I think I was highly impulsive. Mm-hmm. I think it's part of our journey, especially in this industry. There's a tremendous amount of ADHD, and I think everybody has ADHD. I don't care who they are. There's, to a certain extent. Be okay with making mistakes. I was not okay with making mistakes. So I think telling my young self, pause, take a breath, and reflect on what you're doing before you make a move. Now, you can have very cautious, aggressive moves that you can make, But I think it's that what we do sometimes is we don't think about what we're about to do, especially as we're younger. John might be a different story. It might be now in this day and age, you do have to be more calculated with the way you do things because the stakes are higher. But when we were younger, and especially when I was younger, yeah, I would have told myself to be less impulsive. That's for sure.
Yeah, patience.
Yep.
So, Coach, how can our listeners connect with you and learn more about the Tsunami Effect training?
Yeah, right now. So I'm building the website, and then the podcast is going to go up. The book's going to come out. The easiest way to contact me, and anybody can, is going to go through Instagram at Coach Eric Mitchell. That I think is the fastest way. What I'm finding is that seems to be the quickest way to do it because that's the audience. The coaching audience is going to address that. The CEOs are going to be more on the LinkedIn side. But guys, listen, I'm early in this journey. I'm learning where the connections come from. So I actually hired somebody to help me with my LinkedIn. And also the website Tsunami Effect is going to be up and running very shortly, and I'll keep you guys posted on that. The book, I think, if everything goes to fruition, it'll be about a month and a half to 2 months before it's out, and you guys will definitely get a copy of it, and we'll go from there. It's a very unique way that I've written this book, guys. I hired 2 editors. Basically, what I do is I dictate my chapters. And then they're editing, they edit. And I will say this, nobody should be editing their own books. It's something I learned, nobody. And they edit. And I tell you guys, when I read through some of the chapters, it was one of the most emotional experiences I ever had. It's pretty raw, but pretty awesome because it really makes people think. So right now, I'd say that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And I'm open to any conversation with anybody if they ever want to talk to me about coaching.
So, Eric, I have to ask one last question. I have to touch on the coaching side of this. Another question that we tend to ask our guests is, for the athletes and the families that are out there today, what advice can you give to them?
Yeah, I think that, and this is a painful one for some parents to hear, is that we need to slow down. We need to realize that not all our kids are going to play Division I, Division II, or Division III college sports. Do the kids enjoy it? And are you overplaying them with too many sports? You are undertraining your children, which is causing, by the way, an incredible spike in injuries.
I agree with
less
that.
recovery, and you have more kids dropping out of sports than ever before by the time they're 15 years old. So I would caution parents, be very careful about the load time you're putting on these kids, where you should not be playing on 3 separate teams. Now, people don't like to hear this, but we said this, 7% of high school kids play any level of college sports. And then we dwindle that down even further. So be more patient with your kids and let them develop and train. And listen, Harry, we know this. We're part of that.
Right.
But the fact that we need facilities to train kids, when we were kids, you didn't have that.
No.
So I would say to parents, they need to take a breath and realize, are you doing more damage to your kids, or are you complementing your kids' abilities? And that's where I stand on it. And I'm never afraid any longer to tell a parent that they're doing too much.
What's very profound about that statement was that I remember in my certification process with Cirillo was that stat of kids at like age 13 was still a very high percentage. And that was 14 years ago of dropping out of sports, and how it's still very prevalent today. And you've heard me say this a lot. I think these kids are professional amateurs. And if they're not playing, if they're not involved in 18, 20 different sports, or, it's just, to me, it's absurd that an athlete will spend 3-4 months training with you, but then they get to their season and they stop training, and they want to know why they're not performing well, why they've lost a step, why they're not as strong as they were. And you look at them and you're like, well, you haven't been here in 4 months. Well, I haven't had time. Well, you had time. I've watched you post 100 things on Instagram in the last week. I know, you could come in and find 45 to 60 minutes to work out. But that's a topic we'll have to probably address on another day. But I don't want to get started on that one because we'll be here till tomorrow. But
we'll get too deep in the weeds.
Yeah, I don't want to go there. Well, Eric, it was an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you, and
my honor.
And we thank you so very much for being a part of the podcast. And with that being said, that is a wrap on episode 23 of Destination Talk with Paz and Harry. Until we see you again.